The void of space was silent, but the Javelin-class destroyer iron will cut through it like a blade, its massive engines humming with restrained power. On the bridge, Captain Drake stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his sharp eyes fixed on the holographic display. The enemy, a rogue faction of pirates, had ambushed a civilian convoy near the asteroid belt, and the Iron Will was the only ship close enough to respond. "Status report," Drake ordered, his voice steady. "Shields at full strength, weapons primed and ready," replied Lieutenant Cole, his fingers dancing over the tactical console. "Enemy forces consist of 3 corvettes and a modified freighter with heavy guns. They're dug in behind the asteroids, hit-and-run tactics." Drake nodded. Pirates relied on speed and chaos, but the Javelin was built for war. "Helm, bring us into engagement range. Guns, lock on to the lead corvette. Let's show them why they shouldn't pick fights with a destroyer." As the Iron Will surged forward, the pirates opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked through the dark, splashing harmlessly against the destroyer's shields. The ship barely shuddered. "Shields holding at 98%, reported Ensign Riley. Drake allowed himself a small smirk. "Return fire." The Javelin's massive railguns roared to life, sending hypervelocity slugs tearing through space. The lead corvette exploded in a flash of light, its hull ripped apart. The remaining pirates scrambled, their formation breaking. But Drake knew this was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. The remaining pirate ships scattered like startled insects, their engines flaring as they tried to regroup. The Iron Will loomed over them, an unstoppable force of durasteel and firepower. Captain Drake watched as the tactical display updated. 2 corvettes were breaking left, while the armed freighter hung back, its heavy guns charging for another volley. "Helm, keep us between them and the civilian convoy," Drake ordered. "Gunners, prioritize that freighter, it's packing enough firepower to be a real problem." "Aye, Captain." Lieutenant Cole responded, his hands flying across the console. The Javelin's turret swiveled, tracking the lumbering freighter. A heartbeat later, a barrage of laser fire lanced out, hammering the pirate ship's shields. The freighter rocked under the assault, but its own weapons fired back. A massive plasma cannon, jury-rigged and unstable, spat a searing bolt straight at the Iron Will. The blast connected, sending a tremor through the destroyer. "Shields down to 82%. Riley called out. Drake clenched his jaw. That thing hit harder than expected. Evasive maneuvers, now. The Iron Will banked sharply, its thrusters flaring as it dodged another plasma shot. The pirate corvettes, sensing an opening, swooped in, their lighter guns peppering the destroyer's flanks. "Point defense turrets, engage." Drake barked. In an instant, the Javelin's automated defenses sprang to life. Flak bursts and rapid-fire lasers shredded incoming missiles and strafing runs, forcing the corvettes to pull back. "Freighter's shields are failing," Cole announced. "Finish it," Drake commanded. The destroyer's main batteries fired again, this time in a synchronized volley. The freighter's hull buckled, then erupted in a silent explosion, scattering debris across the battlefield. 1 threat down. 2 to go. But the pirates weren't done yet. With the freighter reduced to molten scrap, the remaining pirate corvettes darted through the asteroid field, using the jagged rocks as cover. Their hit-and-run tactics were frustrating, but Captain Drake knew they couldn't hide forever. "Helm, adjust course, cut them off before they reach the denser clusters," Drake ordered. "If they get too deep into those rocks, we'll lose targeting lock." The Iron Will pivoted, its thrusters burning bright as it maneuvered between 2 massive asteroids. The pirates, sensing the trap, split up, one veered hard to port while the other dove downward, both firing wildly to keep the destroyer's gunners distracted. "Turrets tracking starboard target," Cole reported. "But the other one's slipping into our blind spot." Drake's eyes flicked to the tactical display. The second corvette was looping around, aiming for the Javelin's less defended aft section. A smart move, for a pirate. Deploy countermeasures, Drake said. And ready the torpedoes. A series of decoys burst from the destroyer's launchers, filling space with false signals. The pirate corvette hesitated, sensors confused, just long enough for the Iron Will's rear turrets to acquire a lock. Fire! A hail of railgun fire tore into the corvette's engines, sending it spinning out of control. It clipped an asteroid, hull crumpling like paper before vanishing in a flash of flame. One left. The final pirate ship, realizing it was alone, went into a desperate frenzy. It launched every remaining missile in its arsenal before banking sharply toward a nearby jump point. Incoming projectiles. Riley warned. Shields to maximum. Drake barked. And someone stop that ship before it jumps. The Iron Will shuddered as missiles detonated against its defenses. But before the gunners could finish the last corvette, space rippled, and the pirate was gone. Silence settled over the bridge. The battle was over. For now. The bridge of the Iron Will hummed with residual energy, consoles flickering as damage reports scrolled across screens. Captain Drake exhaled slowly, unclenching his fists. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the taste of victory was bitter. One pirate ship had escaped. Damage control teams, report, Drake ordered, turning toward the engineering station. Minor hull breaches on decks 7 and 9, sealed and pressurized, replied Chief Engineer Vance, wiping sweat from his brow. Shields held, but that last missile volley drained our reserves. We'll need time to recharge. Drake nodded. And the civilian convoy? All ships accounted for, Lieutenant Cole confirmed. No casualties, thanks to our intervention. They're requesting permission to dock with us for repairs. Granted. Coordinate with their captains. Drake rubbed his temple. The pirates had been bold, too bold. Attacking a guarded convoy near UE-patrolled space meant either desperation or something worse. Captain, Ensign Riley interrupted, frowning at her scanner. I'm picking up a faint signal from the wreckage of the freighter. It's encrypted, but it's repeating. Drake's instincts prickled. Can we trace it? Working on it, Riley's fingers flew across her console. It's a beacon. And it's not just broadcasting locally. This is a deep space relay frequency. A cold weight settled in Drake's gut. Pirates didn't use sophisticated comms. Unless they weren't just pirates. Cole, scan for any other ships in the area. Full active sweep. The lieutenant hesitated. That'll make us a glowing target for anyone listening, sir. Do it. As the Iron Will sensors pulsed outward, the bridge crew held their breath. Seconds ticked by. Then. Contact. Riley's voice sharpened. Bearing 025, high above the ecliptic. It's big, and it's cloaked. The holographic display flickered, resolving into the outline of a ship, a sleek, predatory silhouette, far larger than a corvette. Drake's blood ran cold. Vanduul. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Pirates were one thing. A Vanduul raiding party was another. And they'd just announced their presence to it. The bridge lights flickered to combat red as klaxons wailed. Captain Drake gripped the armrests of his command chair, watching the tactical display with razor focus. The Vanduul ship decloaked in a ripple of distorted light, a sickle-shaped blade-class carrier, its hull bristling with plasma cannons. All hands, battle stations. Drake barked. Shields to maximum, weapons hot. Comms, send a distress burst to any UEE forces in range, priority override. The Iron Will shuddered as its reactors surged to full combat output. Across the ship, crew scrambled to reinforce bulkheads and prep damage control teams. The civilian convoy's panicked chatter flooded comm channels until Drake ordered them silenced. They needed focus, not chaos. Vanduul ship is launching fighters. Cole shouted. A swarm of angular scythe fighters poured from the carrier's belly, their engines glowing venomous green. Drake's mind raced. A straight fight would be suicide. The Javelin was powerful, but against a carrier and its swarm? Helm, full reverse. Put the asteroid field between us and that carrier. Guns, prioritize those fighters before they overwhelm us. The destroyer roared backward, its massive frame maneuvering with surprising agility. Point defense turrets spun up, filling space with flak bursts that shredded the lead Vanduul fighters. But more kept coming, dozens, then hundreds. Captain, the carrier's charging its main weapon. Riley's voice cracked with tension. Drake didn't hesitate. Evasive pattern delta. All power to forward shields. The Vanduul carrier's spine glowed crimson as it fired, a massive plasma lance that seared past the Iron Will's flank, vaporizing asteroids in its path. The shockwave rocked the destroyer, sending crew tumbling. Direct hit to Deck 12. Hull breach contained. Vance reported through gritted teeth. Drake watched the tactical display with grim determination. They were outgunned. Outnumbered. But the Iron Will still had one card left to play. Prepare the torpedo salvo. Target that carrier's engines. He leaned forward. And someone get me a firing solution now. The Iron Will's torpedo bays hummed with lethal energy as targeting data streamed across the gunnery consoles. Captain Drake watched the Vanduul carrier loom on the viewscreen, its plasma cannon cycling for another volley. Firing solution locked. Cole announced. But at this range, we'll eat return fire the second we launch. Drake's knuckles whitened around his armrest. Then we make it count. All tubes, full spread, fire. With a thunderous roar, 12 torpedoes streaked from the Javelin's flanks, their engines burning blue against the void. The Vanduul fighters wheeled to intercept, but point defense turrets laid down covering fire, shredding the agile craft before they could stop the salvo. The carrier twisted violently, its thrusters flaring as it tried to evade. Too late. 6 torpedoes found their mark. A chain of explosions rippled along the alien ship's spine, rupturing its engine array in a spectacular detonation that lit up the asteroid field. The shockwave sent nearby fighters spinning like leaves in a storm. Direct hit. Riley cheered. Their main drive is. The bridge suddenly lurched as a Vanduul plasma bolt slammed into their starboard side. Alarms screamed as consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Shields down to 20%. Vance bellowed over the din, multiple hull breaches on lower decks. Drake gripped his chair as the Iron Will shuddered. The carrier was crippled, but its remaining fighters were now in a frenzy, and their own ship was bleeding air and power. All remaining power to engines and point defense. Drake ordered. Prepare for emergency jump. Cole's head snapped up. Sir, the civilians. Can't help them if we're space dust, Drake cut in. Plot the shortest safe jump. We draw the Vanduul away and regroup. As the Iron Will pivoted toward open space, its battered frame glowing from countless wounds, the surviving Vanduul fighters gave chase, unaware of the trap Drake had just set. The Iron Will streaked through the void, its engines roaring at emergency thrust. Behind them, the Vanduul fighters pursued like a pack of wolves, plasma fire nipping at their heels. Captain Drake watched the tactical display with cold focus. Every second brought them closer to the jump point, and closer to their last gamble. Jump drive charging, Cole reported, his voice tight. 80 seconds to activation. Another plasma bolt rocked the ship. Warning lights flared across the bridge as a secondary explosion echoed through the hull. Shields failing. Vance shouted. They're targeting our engines. Drake didn't flinch. Hold course. And prepare the payload. A murmur spread through the bridge crew. The payload, a last resort tactic, one that could end this chase in seconds. But the timing had to be perfect. The jump drive's whine grew louder, vibrating through the deck plates. The Vanduul closed in, their weapons glowing hot. 50 seconds. Cole called. Now, Lieutenant. Drake barked. Cole slammed his fist onto the console. With a deafening clang, the iron will released its hidden cargo, a cluster of seismic charges, disguised as debris. The pursuing Vanduul fighters, too focused on their prey, didn't react in time. The charges detonated. A sphere of pure force erupted behind the iron will, shredding the lead fighters and sending the rest spiraling out of control. The shockwave rattled the destroyer, but its reinforced hull held. "Jump drive ready," Riley cried. Drake allowed himself a grim smile. "Punch it." Space twisted around them as the quantum drive engaged. In an instant, the iron will vanished, leaving only wreckage and silence in its wake. When the ship re-emerged in safe space, the bridge crew exhaled as one. The battle was over. They had survived. But as damage reports flooded in and the weight of their victory settled, Drake knew one thing for certain: this wasn't the end. The Vanduul would be back. And so would the Iron Will.